Hello, Drunkduckers. This is Ozone Ocean, and with me are Tance and Baines.
Hello.
All right, so this week we're talking about, as Tance has very cleverly simplified, we're talking about abstraction and the problems we make when we try and develop ideas based on those abstractions and simplifications. This is a very abstract way of talking about the subject. But we'll get into more detail after theme song. That was our little theme song. I hope you like that. Something like Goddess of Thunder that Gummoss did. I used as a theme song because I just love it so much. It's so epic. Alright, so this week, we're talking about the, basically, when you try and develop complicated ideas based on simplified concepts, because, like, the world is a complicated place. We have to understand it using simplified concepts, because that's just how we transfer knowledge. You know, like, water is wet, fire is hot, the ground is flat, very simplified ideas. And when you get that kind of thing, that's fine. That's a good way to have a basic understanding of things. The trouble happens when you try and develop more complicated understandings or more complicated ideas based on those simplified concepts, because those aren't really how things are. The ground isn't flat. Fire isn't just hot. Water isn't just wet. There's more complicated aspects to those things. This is a very, very basic, poor example because it's so basic. But I don't know. It's not really time to provide you with a more complicated example yet until we actually go into the Quackcast. So before we do that, I'll have to bring up the featured comic, which is Asphodels. So Quackcast is going to tell you about that now.
Hello, this is Quackcast, and the feature I've selected for this week is Over the Asphodels by Ma Na, and it is rated E for everyone. Every house is massive for a mouse. This current one is a palace. Manny, Vanille, and the gang are preparing to enter rat territory without making a sound. Left behind, Tess navigates through a swarm of rats before descending into a dreamscape where a boatman waits to assist in crossing a river. One thing feels off, the uneasiness of something lurking in the shadows getting closer. This new world seems too real, too vivid to be a dream. Line art done in 2B pencil and colors painted with Rohrer and Klinger liquid colored ink diluted in deionized water. Be quiet as a church mouse that parties like a wild animal when no one is around, and read Over the Asphodels by Ma Na, rated E.
That was Quackcast talking about Asphodels, which is a little comic, which is pretty cool. So, yes, and Gummoss's theme song. So Gummoss hasn't provided us a theme this week, so it'll be another best of, and I will tell you about that best of now. Big fat beats and an epic sound. This one really brings the thunder. It'd be great as the intro tune to a professional wrestling match. It really has that kind of epic building sort of feel. It builds anticipation perfectly and really slams home and delivers on its promises. Epic sounds. Take it away, Gummoss, with your theme to Thrud, Goddess of Thunder. That was our best of by Gum Wallace. I hope you enjoyed that. I played it again because I like it. Okay, now the topic of the Quackcast. So yes, simplified, abstracted ideas that are used in order to transfer knowledge about something. Tanz's great example in our little Patreon video was so cartoons are for kids. That's a very simplified concept. Cartoons are for kids. And because of, you might learn something or transfer that bit of knowledge to someone, then you make errors and mistakes, because then you'll see like a cartoon that has sex in it, or drug use, or violence, or gore, or something like that, and you'll go, oh my god, is this what they're showing children? This is horrific. These people must be perverts. They must be weirdos. We must ban this stuff from TV in case our children see it and they get corrupted or disturbed or traumatized.
Yeah.
And the problem there is your fundamental error was that you used that simplified knowledge that cartoons are for kids, and of course they're not. It's a hugely, massively verified medium. Varied medium with all sorts of different aspects. Some of it's for kids, and some of it's for adults, and some of it's for everybody, and some of it's for education, and some of it's for training manuals for military weapons. We use cartoons for all kinds of different things. The idea that it's for kids is purely it only addresses one single aspect of cartoons. Yeah. So yeah, this is an example of how this idea applies.
And it can lead to a lot of mishaps. I must have told before of this little anecdote from my childhood, where my grandmother, childhood was in late 80s, early 90s. All right. So here in Greece, cartoons were not even called cartoons. They were called Mickey Mouse. That's how abstracted down to just, Disney Mouse was the equivalent of cartoon. So my grandma brought to me while I was sick. I don't even remember what I was sick with, some kind of bronchitis or whatever. She brought me a videotape to watch it, to watch when I was, in bed, blah, blah. And it was Ninja Scroll.
Oh my God. How old were you?
I think maybe, I want to say 9.
Oh my God! Oh Jesus! That's.
I was still in elementary school, so definitely like around 9, tops 10 years old. I don't think more than that. So, and I remember being extremely confused at what I was looking at.
Oh my God!
And it was the first exposure I had to the concept of a woman being violated.
That's what I was thinking about. That's not for children at all.
Exactly.
It's not even for adults.
Exactly. So my mom saw what I was looking at, and said, you know what? Let's watch it together so that I can explain what you are looking at, and then I'll talk to your grandma.
Oh my God! Yeah, Mickey Mouse is went off the rails in this.
And that was purely out of her extremely simplified concept that whatever is animated is for kids, and it's like very sugary, happy-go-lucky, safe stuff. So
yeah.
Right.
2D animated images must be for children, because there's the whole Disney company popularized this idea that I think even back then when Disney created his empire based on his Mickey Mouse and all this kind of stuff, cartoons weren't for children back then. His were, but everyone else's weren't. I think there were, even when you look back at the cartoons from even the 1940s, and 50s, like the Looney Tunes, they weren't for children. They were for adults. Like, especially if you look at the ones from during the Second World War. Oh my God, the propaganda and racism and all this kind of stuff in those things. And it was because it was entertaining for adults to see that, and it was because of for adult culture. So yeah, the idea that cartoons were for children was always incorrect. It was just popularized by Walt Disney and various producers of this stuff in Japan and Germany and wherever else. Yeah, but no, it's far more to it than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good example of this idea. I'll go back. I'll backslide a bit to more like I don't know, scientific kind of examples, just to show how problematic it can be. Like, okay, so the idea that is quite popular is that okay, you'll get a cold if you go to bed with wet hair or you hang around in the rain. It's actually, there's these kind of ideas are based on often grains of truth or kind of abstracted ideas of truth. So you might get a cold in that situation because, being physically cold could like lower your immune system and make it more likely that you're going to catch that virus from someone else. But having wet hair or just being cold or being in the rain won't ever give you a cold by itself. Ever. Because viruses don't just spontaneously generate out of nothing. They have to be transferred. So yeah, that's an example of how these kind of it's an example of what these kind of things, how they work. This kind of just silly it creates like urban myths and all this kind of stuff because we base it on this simplified knowledge that's not true. But yeah, that's a good example of it. I won't go any more into deeper into this because then I'll just bring up all these urban myths about what they're based on and how they form and all this kind of stuff. So it just goes on and on and on.
Even things that are, super political right now and controversial, like, for example, there are only two genders, right?
So what's that?
There are only two genders.
Oh, yes. So the simplified version of that is like X and Y chromosomes. Male, we know males, we know females, we know X is a woman, we know XY is a man, but it's not that simple. That's just the simplest way to transfer that knowledge. The truth is way more complicated.
Exactly. And to go even like give another non-controversial, at least for now, I mean, I don't know, with the purity and pure of blood culture that seems to be emerging like a zombie from the 40s, we might get to be controversial again. But blood, you don't have only 4 blood types. That's very simplified. There are a lot more blood types out there, and there are a lot more ways to categorize blood types. But we don't need to know about it because in everyday life and for basic functions where we need to know blood types, the 4 work just fine, like 90%, 95% of the time. So, okay, fine. So that's why we don't need to know about it.
Exactly. So we don't need to know about it, but then when we, want to talk about it and stuff like that, we base our knowledge on those simplified concepts as if that's all there is to it. And that's when we run into errors. It's like, okay, nationality is another thing. When people go, oh yeah, oh yes, I'm white, or I'm black, or I'm Irish, or I'm my like ancestry. Yes, we come from this part of the world, and ancestry and hereditary and all this. It's not that simplified. These are national backgrounds. They don't apply to your genetics and race is made up.
Yeah, but I would even say that is not part of what we're talking about because race, by definition, is not a biological thing. it's a completely different animal to what race is. So I would say that it's not even that. That comes from, I would say, pseudoscience. So it's not even actual science like gender, not gender, sex, or blood types, or that kind of thing.
Well, it's
I,
based on a simplified version of how we see individual and differences between people. So we simplify it all the way down to concepts like race, and that's a simplified version of and I've had people in my life tell me that okay, so human beings are made up of yellow, red, white, and black. And these are the types of people, and everybody has different versions of that. And oh my god, you freaking idiot!
that feels like it's a different kind of CMYK.
Skin color is made of those different shades, but human beings have no. That doesn't apply to actual human beings at all. And when I say skin color, I don't mean skin color. I mean the tones that make up all skin color based on those four colors. It's not individuals. There's no such thing as a red person or a black person or a white person. That's just how we communicate with each other about humans, because it's easier to do.
We should generally stop doing that, but that's a completely different discussion. But yeah, the whole oversimplification is, it's not bad in the sense that we need it to be able to do everyday stuff, but we have to also be aware that it is very simplified. And if we know why it is simplified, excellent. If we don't, we should just keep in mind that this is simplified for everyday interaction and not be used for in-depth anything.
Exactly. So let's bring it back to fiction if we can, which is not that hard.
No, let's take fantasy, which is honestly that was my first foray into art in general. I always initially, at least, identified as a fantasy author and then fantasy artist. In back in the days of Elfwood, if you recall that.
Yeah, that's where I started online too, at Elfwood.
Yeah, you pointy ears on everyone. But yeah, and I have seen. Sorry, I might sneeze at some point. I like in advance. I apologize. The whole concept of fantasy, I remember initially was all very Tolkien stuff, and everyone when they heard fantasy, that was what they were thinking about, and then it was Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. That was fantasy, and it was very hard to quote unquote sell any concept that was fantasy but not that. I remember like people would wait, and I remember when I was talking about like the art of veiling that had dragons in it, they expected lizard dragons. Like, no, I don't have lizard dragons. I have dragons that come from a completely different background than why they are called that.
So which of the races in your art of veiling are the elves and the dwarves and the halflings?
I don't have dwarves and I don't have halflings. I do have elves. I have and humans. But for me, I mean, I don't have races. There are no races. Everyone is the same race. Everyone is the same race. But they have different nationalities. And these nationalities are, the elves, the humans, and the dragons, and the outer rim that are the bad guys, at least in the beginning. And they all have attributes that are purely cultural, and not racial. So this single distinction was so hard to get people to conceive.
Yeah.
when they were asking what the novel was about at the time when I first, like in the early 2000s.
You know what?
Super.
Sorry, I was going to have an aside. Um, Way back in the day, there were the Inklings, like a C.S. Lewis, what's his name? J.R. Tolkien, and a few others. And one of the other people who were part of the Inklings was E.R. Edison, I think his name was. And he wrote a book. He didn't like the way C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien did their things because he thought it was too kind of friendly and nicey. And his book was The Worm Ouroboros. That was his one, written at the same time as Lord of the Rings and Lion, Witch of the Wardrobe and all that kind of stuff. And The Worm Ouroboros was a book with goblins and elves and things like that. But instead of being the different races, they were like you were describing, Tans. They were different ethnicities of people, which, and that was written at the same time as Lord of the Rings, and it makes it very hard for someone like me, when I was initially reading it, to grasp the fact that the goblins that are in the story aren't little green people with big noses and big ears. They're actually just normal human beings. They're just called goblins, and the trolls or the elves or whatever other characters aren't big hairy guys and made of stone or whatever. They're just other humans who are just called that. So there you go, Tance. There's someone who had done that back in the day at the same time as Tolkien was writing. So
you know what? That's and of course there were other kinds of fantasy, like the whole Proud Knight Fair Lady kind of fantasy that was very Arthurian. Was not actually Tolkien-esque. It was before, at least my concept. It was before Tolkien. It was very like medieval lore kind of thing, rather than orcs and elves and stuff like that. So, to bring it to our topic, the biggest thing I think that made it so hard to have people like accept that, yeah, this is still fantasy, just a different like world building setup, um, was that they took that Tolkien's setup was the rule. Like if you wanted to write fantasy, this is what, like this was the setup that you would be writing in, if that makes sense.
It's the framework.
Yeah. Like people, for example, I have been down the rabbit hole. I discovered a YouTube channel of a guy that is insanely talented and creates like a full muscle and skeleton as designs of mythical creatures as realistically as possible. Like how would they be if they were evolutionarily faithful to the laws of evolution, and how would these creatures be in reality if they existed. So that was amazing. But he gets all this flack by people that say, oh no, this cannot be a dragon, this has to be a wyvern, or wyverns can do this, or and the thing is that if and he said that, and I totally agree, it's fantasy. If I say that in my world this is a dragon and there are no wyverns, there are no wyverns, period. Everyone is a
It's a
dragon.
dragon.
Yeah. Um, and I think that it comes down to this concept of simplifying stuff and then applying it as the law.
And that, I mean, like Dungeons and Dragons was a great way of monetizing fantasy back in the 1970s or whenever they started that. And that, unfortunately, because you have to transfer the fantasy from novels and books into a game, which means you have to itemize everything and sort of kind of list it all down, and everything has to be defined. And that's really the origin of all that wyvern stuff. And okay, so this is a rim, this is a dragon, this is a wyvern, this is a blah 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 blah, and that doesn't apply to reality. That applies to Dungeons and Dragons, and as a game system. And unfortunately, many people have grown up on that and have thought that is how fantasy is, and have thought it is defined in these very discrete ways, and that created this because it was that's how they had to transfer knowledge. That's how they had to understand things in order to make the game work, and they've incorrectly passed that knowledge onto the real world, and not onto the real world, but onto other forms of fiction, and that's where you get these mistakes, because as Tant says, it's fantasy, and the reality of fantasy is this stuff isn't defined. It's all different, and it depends on the works of fiction and the authors of what these things are called, because the way Dungeons and Dragons sort of developed these ideas was like taking it from different cultural sources like mythology as well as fiction, and deciding, okay, so this thing is a wyvern, and that's just their version of it. It's not. If you go back to the original sources where they got all this knowledge from, you'll find that this is a dragon, that's a dragon. You'll find so many different versions of the dragon that don't conform to what Dungeons and Dragons says is a dragon. Yeah, the world is very complicated. Yeah, so sorry, Tance, I just needed to butt in with all that.
No, I thoroughly enjoyed that. But yeah, and now, in general, I think that at least when it comes to fantasy, that is a bit loosened up in the sense that people are more open to different world building setups. But what I have seen is one little thing that I have seen is that people expect there to be more comedy in fantasy than not, for some reason. I don't know why.
Really?
There's this expectation that fantasy is played for laughs a little bit, and it's not dramatic. And I honestly have no idea where that comes from, because I haven't been keeping up with pop culture. I don't know, maybe some kind of new thing that is more on the comedic side. I don't know.
Isekai fantasy, maybe? Like Japanese isekai. There's a lot of comedy in that.
Maybe that's why.
It's a massive industry at the moment because it exploded after Sword Art Online, and it just went. Everything is now isekai fantasy. So
I remember in the author notes of some fantasy series I read when I was young, Xanth, and then the Myth Adventure.
Yes. The
Robert Asprin series, and they both talked about how different they were at the time. This would have been the very end of the 70s, I think, very late 70s, with Xanth and with Myth, where it was very serious at the time. Like fantasy literature was by and large serious, and so they were really kind of the outliers with more comedic takes.
Yeah,
interesting.
That's true. That's like when you go back to that era when the Xanth came out and Myth Adventures, fantasy comedy was very rare. That's what made them so amazing, because they did that and no one else was doing that back then. So that's interesting. Good point, Bones.
I had one to make, and that was it.
I love those Xanth books. Love them. The dragon in that was the main dragon. He had lots of dragons in Xanth, but the main dragon was Stanley Steamer, who had like 6 legs or 8 legs or something. No wings. He just charged through this like a canyon between.
Yeah, he just run around.
Yeah, this specific thing, because he was based on a train. That was his thing. Because there was Xanth is based on Florida, and there was meant to be some sort of.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's weird. But that's off the subject. Oh, cool.
Yeah. Those books were, especially the Myth Adventures, which I really love. But also Xanth, I read like those early books are great, or at least they were at the time. I haven't read them in a very long time. But, that was what I sort of, not what I defined as fantasy, but from my horizon, like that's what fantasy was. That's what I read. And that's all the fantasy I read.
There was a few others like Rogers Zeleny or Zensky or something. I can't remember. He was a fantasy comedian. Comedy.
With Terry Pratchett, which I haven't read.
A bit later, yeah. Terry Pratchett.
Was he later?
Yeah. Late 80s. Fantastic books, yeah, Terry Pratchett. Yeah, there were a few, but there weren't many. It wasn't a very big world. Yeah. Oh, Terry Brooks. He was another one. He made a big kind of splash with his Tolkien-esque Shannara world, I think. You know, like he got very famous and made a lot of money on these Shannara books, and they were just terrible kind of his versions of Tolkien, basically. So many different writers were doing. Every writer was doing their Tolkien stuff, and he wrote these other ones that were comedic, that were different from that, and those were really good. Much better than these crap Shannara books. I mean, I won't call them crap. People love them, okay? They're probably good. But his Magic Kingdom for Sale Sold. That's a great series. Very funny. Sorry, Tans.
Yeah, I would say that one of the, first guard, let's say, of fantasy that for me, she inspired me a lot, is Mary Stuart, with the whole Merlin series, The Crystal Cave.
Okay.
Oh.
Highly recommended. She had a way of writing. First of all, she writes like first person limited, and we watch everything through Merlin's eyes. As he starts off as a young guy, and I haven't read it for a very long time, but I remember that it was so viscerally coming alive into my head. I felt like I was literally in Merlin's head. And that was amazing. And of course, it was not super dramatic. It was not comedic. It was very weirdly slice of life, if life is also like magic. But it was super pedestrian, the way that she would write things. It felt very much like a very well-researched medieval novel that also has magic.
Oh, great.
In the style of Arthur, like Arthurian style magic. That isn't very prominent, but it is there and does things. So that sort of thing. I really like that.
A relatable world.
Yeah.
One thing that comes to me, okay, taking it back again to our simplified ideas, like I always come across this thing, and not always, but I often came across this thing saying, there's not enough women authors in fantasy and science fiction. Oh God, there's just, people don't read enough women authors. And I think that was another bit of simplified kind of knowledge, because at one stage there definitely weren't enough women being published in those fields. But I'd say when I was into fantasy and science fiction in a big way, like more than 50% of the authors were female. Maybe about 60%. Like, and my favorite books in those series are still female authors. And they're incredible. My libraries, stock those. And I'd always read female authors in those fields. So, perhaps that little bit of unexamined knowledge of there's not enough female authors in these fields was, a bit of unexamined knowledge. And it's used and people often use those kind of things in order to, create policy, or then to go off on other tangents saying, oh yes, and we have to do this, whereas the truth might not actually reflect that. I'm not sure about the truth. I don't know how many different authors were the gender breakdown of authors at that time when I was reading books. I don't know what it was. I just know that the ability of myself to, in order to acquire books, was, you know, based on the library I had and the bookshops that were around me, and through those sources, it was a lot of female authors. So, yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of truth that, if you will, that would obviously change over time. But there's probably some space between people realizing there aren't enough female authors, for example, and then maybe that changes, but that belief kind of hangs on, and you know, there's some space between things changing and then the belief changing, and it'll
exactly.
Back and forth.
Yeah, so that bit of simplified knowledge doesn't account for change. It's like okay, so here's a bit of thing. When we talk about evolution, so evolution is unfortunately massively impacted by this simplified knowledge idea. So people believe that evolution is about progress from simple stuff to complicated stuff, from basic monkeys to super advanced humans, or from single-celled organisms to I don't know, massive, amazing god beings in the future. That's what evolution is. Like, people say, oh, the next step in evolution. Oh my God, what's the next step? We need to evolve. You're unevolved, and that's actual bullshit. That has nothing to do with evolution. Evolution is just the process of change, and it's not the change to better, it's the process of change. It's not even the change to the survival of the fittest. It's just change, and that change can result in an organism dying out because it doesn't fit in its environment anymore. Because evolution isn't about change to better fit your environment, it's just change. And that change can be based on so many things, like viruses, or being isolated, or sex kind of driven stuff. You know, the creatures like rhinos, they admire the horns of these different, you know, creatures, so they want bigger and bigger and bigger horns until they become extinct because hunters want those horns, you know. So yeah, evolution is just about change. And the simplified bit of knowledge there is that we transfer you know, the ideas of evolution through that stupid diagram of like the monkey starting as walking on two legs, and then getting less hairy and turning into Neanderthal man, and then, you know, Cro-Magnon and whatever, you know, Homo erectus and
the biggest thing I would say is that you know, that very, very famous image of the Australopithecus and then the Homo erectus, and, you know, all the different humanoids marching one in front of the other until, you know, you have the Homo sapiens.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, but I'm taking that, I'm poaching from you, and I'm taking that, like that image that is emblazoned everywhere on t-shirts and stuff, and that gives the impression that you only have this one linear progression, whether it is better or worse. I'm not even going into that. So then that produces other fallacies, because it does not account for, you know, everything evolving at the same time, and so you have apes alongside us, and you know, other primates and whatever.
Yeah,
and
if we evolve from apes, why are there still apes?
exactly, that's where I was getting to. That enervating quote unquote argument about evolution being a hoax. That just the only thing it proves is that you don't know what evolution is, which is fine. But you cannot, I mean, you cannot present yourself with a gotcha moment that then gets shut down, and then you just double down on that with basically nothing.
More
And
fake
Someone
knowledge.
actually did that literal gotcha on me one time, many years ago, and it did get me. I was stumped. I don't think I wasn't arguing for evolution at the time with this person. I don't imagine myself ever doing that. But we were having some kind of conversation. I think she must have been talking about religion. It was a coworker, and yeah, that she literally said that about the gorillas. Well, then why are there still gorillas? Like,
Because
well, you got me. I'll see you at church tomorrow.
oh my god,
yeah,
No, I
because
didn't say that, but I had no counter argument.
because the transfer of knowledge is like we all start out with that, and we're not expected to go deeper into it, and so we do get stumped because we're on the same kind of level. So we
Yeah,
don't
it
know
ties
any
into your
advanced.
exact topic, I guess, Oz.
Yeah.
Like I had a notion of evolution,
yeah.
but
And
didn't
unfortunately,
really know anything about anything deeper than that about what it means.
Yeah, and you know what though? I mean, okay, you didn't know anything further, so that you weren't able to counter her gotcha moment. But that the way to answer in these situations, in my opinion, is what I would suggest is that yeah, I don't know the answer to this, but you also don't know the answer to this. And
yeah,
the reason is
Right.
that there is a reason that there are evolutionary scientists that we both are not. So next time when we meet, I will have an answer for you because Google exists, and
Right.
I will
not
find
back then when Baines did the argument, but
Actually, at this time, it didn't exist. Yeah, it's true.
yeah, okay. Encyclopedias exist, or I can actually go and ask someone about it. I'll research it for you because clearly you're not interested in research, and I'll come up with an answer for you. And
For
that is
sure.
the only way to handle the gotcha moment because they try to get you to be defensive that you don't know and I know because I'm a triumphant ignoramus and the whole thing is that yeah, I don't know about this, but this is the scientific consensus, and I will go and find out
mm,
why your question has already been answered and what with. So
I'd
Yeah.
have to say though that a lot of people who are pro ideas like pro evolution,
mm,
as if you could be pro like a normal scientific concept, is that they also don't understand. So they will go, with the whole like progression theory
yeah,
and
yeah,
the next step in evolution, all this kind of bullshit, without understanding it's just about change. And they will be promoting these simplified concepts as if that's all there is to it. So they're also responsible
mm,
for promoting misinformation about evolution and um, creating these idiots that come out with their anti-evolution ideas
yeah,
because you, they don't make sense and they're very easy to explode those ideas because they're just simplified and it doesn't account for all the different like realities involved in the concept. So,
mhm.
there's that.
I would say I would again. I haven't researched it, so I don't have proof on that. But um, my theory is that the whole um, tendency to force people to convey ideas in like very like microblogging posts like X or Blue Sky or whatever is like Mastodon, whatever is your chosen small post social media, uh,
Yeah,
forces
like
people,
Instagram or something, Twitter, all that. Yeah.
forces people to oversimplify things and have these huge debates about things that have a lot of nuance we through a medium that has very little room for nuance or no room for nuance and that hampers a lot of this um, notion that we should make way for nuance. That means that we should learn things and understand that the general rule applies, but it applies with
Caveats.
yes, with caveats. I was looking for that.
Mhm.
So That's one thing. Uh, and the other is that when you have someone that is arguing with you in bad faith, they will oversimplify in order to be able to quote unquote beat you. So there's
Right.
also
It's a good technique.
Yeah.
no, no. It's a sorry to say that it's a shit technique. It only it only works when the other person buys into it and rolls with that. If
Yeah.
the other person doesn't, it collapses, which is entertaining.
Well,
It happens.
I wonder what
Yes.
percentage of like online arguments this encompasses.
About 99%.
Probably somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We use so many simplified concepts I don't like the term fascist
Mm.
because it's such like a concept that relates to a particular time and a particular people, and by calling everybody who don't like fascists, it gets rid of a lot of complexity, and it's a problem. But this isn't a Quackcast about that. Let's take it back to fiction again.
But yeah, what I would say though is that you know how the easiest way to beat this, at least on a broad brushing level, like very very broad brush limits to a discussion, is to demand before any argument is made, give me your definition to this concept. What is your definition of a fascist?
Mhm.
And then we will work on that. I will go with your definition of a fascist. I don't care what it is. Please tell me what your definition of a fascist is. And that is how you become annoying to anyone that is a bad faith argument
Yeah.
posting person.
And the same applies to people who call everyone communist.
Oh
The
yeah.
Yeah,
same
or I'm sure we talked about at the time, this would be a few years ago that this was big in the culture now. Everything is racist, everything is sexist. I'm positive we talked about that idea, and that kind of seems to have gone away, I think, from what I can tell.
Not really. I mean, I see, especially like in U.S. politics, I see that the communists are coming, the communist revolution or insurrection, or the socialists
Yeah.
are coming. The only thing I haven't heard is the Bolsheviks are coming. Like the
Yeah,
only.
I've heard that word. I've seen that word used thrown out a couple of times, just a couple.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
I don't know what that even means personally.
Bolsheviks.
Yeah,
The Bolsheviks are more historic than fascists are at this point. So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
The people making using the word. I think I've seen two people use it like in the last couple years, and it caught my notice because I don't know what it is.
It gets very granular as Marxists and Leninists and things.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's definitely here. Like the communist, Marxist, socialist thing is back right now. Anti-Semitic. I guess the more broad brush of a few years ago, like that's racist, that's sexist. I
Mm.
don't see that quite as much. I'm sure it's still there, but yeah, now we've come back to the what is it, the 50s with the commies and
Mm.
like
It's
communist
1950s.
accusation and all that kind of stuff. So
We're reliving it all again.
round and round we go.
Yeah. But anyway, for anyone who wants to look up the Bolsheviks, they were very heavily involved in the Russian Revolution, and they are not the only communists around. They are just the ones that terrified the nobility of Russia, of Tsarist Russia. And go from there. Look it up.
Right.
Yes, it's complicated.
Yes.
The world is very complicated. It's massive. Like a good example is like when people talk about ancient Greece,
Oh,
and they think everybody is basically Spartan hoplites. That's all there is to
Mm.
it.
Or-
You
yeah.
simplify the whole of ancient Greece
Mm.
into 1,000, 2,000 years or whatever, however long it lasted for, into just one single concept.
Yeah, or two actually. The two versions are either philosopher in Athens or Spartan in like demon. So
That's all there was to it. There's nothing else.
nothing.
It's over those thousands of years of history. It's only Aristotle and Leonidas, and that's all there was to
Exactly.
Greece.
It's
Just those two guys.
oh my god. Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, we base all our knowledge on that kind of thing. So, yep, all Greeks were either wearing togas and had big beards and they were all fat, or they were huge, muscly people in armor, and that's what it was. And they were all men. Apart from those gay people on Lesbos.
Or the gayness, like they were all the P word, and they were all gay, or they were all not gay. I mean, if you are a far right Greek, they were not gay. They were all very manly men ever, Um,
The most manliest men.
yeah, super manly, and they they never engaged in combing each other's hair before battle ever, and
No, and scraping the oil off their bodies with
never.
metal combs or whatever they think.
Yeah, but the whole thing, what I'm trying to say is that there is so much nuance in ancient Greek sexuality and what it was and what it entailed and how they conceived of uh, sex with women, sex with men, sex with younger men that were basically boys, teenage boys, even prepubescent boys, and how that was done, which was wrong, by the way. It was absolutely wrong, but it was all there was to it, and it wasn't always done. So, but yeah, the
Well,
gayness was a thing, and it's there in the mythology as well.
I mean, in hundreds and hundreds of years of history, I'm sure many different things happened, and you can't say that Greece was all about this and all about that because, as Bain said before, about things change over time,
Exactly.
and that massively changes stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a good example. Okay. So let's bring it back to fiction again.
Well, it is fiction in the sense that if you look at the mythology, it's also fiction, and the mythology of any like historical people is also oversimplified into very basic concepts that usually represent a very narrow historical period of that history because mythology evolves together with the people that creates it. So you have different versions of the same gods or different myths that evolve or who worships what, and what have you, the whole thing. And so if you delve into mythology, it is a whole world of different nuance and
Yes,
history.
it sort of had the Dungeons and Dragons kind of aspect to it. In that, when people go, oh yes, the ancient Greeks worship this and worship that, they've just categorized things in very simplified ways. Whereas, like you said, there were many different versions of this, depending on all the different frickin' islands and states. They all worship things differently, and there were different cults even within cities and stuff like that who would worship things differently. But to write a book about this, you need to simplify it and say, no, Athena's about this, and Hera was about this, and which is not the reality at all.
No,
It's more complicated. Speaking of fiction, though, there's this movie, The Odyssey. There's a new movie about The Odyssey. I think Christopher Nolan's the director.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not sure.
Mhm.
So in that, there's a bit of controversy because there's this image of the actor dressed up as Odysseus, and people are going, "Oh my God, this is the Hollywood version of Odysseus. This is really cool, and this is like the this would be the realistic version of what Odysseus should look like." And there's this guy, in the
Very
massive bronze armor, with the like the pointy helmet and the boar tusk, stuff on his head.
Oh,
And
yeah.
people are going, yeah, like saying, yeah, like this is why we don't let nerds, do films, because this is the real version looks weird and this Hollywood version looks really good. But the whole thing is like my problem with that is like the Hollywood version is freaking shit, because he's got this simplified helmet, it's a black leather looking armor. I mean, it looks crap.
Yeah.
The actual ancient Greeks of that time didn't create Homer looking like the guy with the boar tusk helmet and stuff like. He wasn't depicted, not Homer, sorry, Odysseus. He wasn't depicted like that. He was depicted as a classical Greek of with a Corinthian helmet and hoplite armor. That's what they had all these people dressed up as, because that was the art style at the time, and that is bloody cool. That's so much cooler than this crap armor from this Nolan film. The Corinthian helmet in the classical style, and that armor is just amazingly cool. And Hollywood never gets that right. So yeah, that's.
I would then say like at this point I have given up expecting our mythology to be honored like other mythologies are. But if at least it stays faithful to the original text, like the Odyssey, if it stays faithful to that, I'll be happy.
I won't. There won't be the gods and all this kind of stuff.
No God. I think
get rid of all of them.
I think they have cast gods, haven't they?
Really?
I think so.
Okay.
I was happy because someone cast gods. If it's not Nolan, it's someone else. I think there are a couple of Odysseys being made. But yeah, the biggest issue is I wouldn't care if they made Odysseus a current guy that's was dressed like today. I don't care. Just be faithful to the whole myth of it. Like,
right.
Do it, and then also be consistent. By the way, I mean, if you are going to go with your own thing and not claim that it is historical, I'm fine with it. If you claim that it is historical of the era that supposedly archaeologists say it happened, and you are not, I have a problem with it. If you are historical in the sense of how the ancient Greeks, thought of the thing, and you are not doing that, again, I have a problem with it. But that's, like, just be consistent with what you say you are, and respect the plot, please. Like, a little bit.
I like the Hallmark movies they made in the late 90s or early 2000s maybe. I'm not sure, but that was really well done from memory.
Oh, is that
really well done.
What's his name? I remember there was an Odyssey that was very well done with gods and stuff.
It had gods. It had Agamemnon in it. And Menelaus, and they had big long beards with they looked exactly like the betrayals that you'd see from ancient Greek artwork. It was incredible. Just fell in love with it.
Yeah, I don't remember the guy. I know. What's his name? Oh my god, I have to find it now.
This is a bit of an aside, but we're coming down to the end of the Quackcast. It's Quackcast number 764, about abstract things and how you can't really base complicated ideas on simplified abstracted knowledge. You have to go deeper. You have to understand it more.
So we can all agree on a few things, a few aphorisms. Taxation is theft.
Okay.
Taxation is theft.
I found the guy with Armand Assam, or however he's pronounced. It's a mini from the late 90s. And I really like
Ooh.
Isabella Rossellini was in it as well.
Yes! Oh my god, yes, that's it, Tance. I've got to find that again and watch it and
Yes.
explode all my ideas, and they will all be wrong and it'll be crap.
Yeah. For me, that's the best version of the Odyssey that I feel is respectful of the material and the times and blah, blah, everything. Well done.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a good one. So Baines was saying all taxation is theft, and evolution is a myth.
Women are evil, and men are pigs.
Highly evil. Men are pigs. Yeah, that's true.
We all vaccines are all fake, and
Tylenol causes
men are pigs, especially after Cersei gets hold of us. That's an important thing.
True.
The Odyssey. That's it. Our time is up. Quackcast 764. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.